Just like in the United States, there are a bunch of players from different countries around the world that really don't get around to playing internationally. In the US, you got people like this guy, Mac Miller. Well, in New Zealand, the native home of Nigel Richards, we've got a new badass in town, and his name is Dylan Early.
Nice stormy weather outside. We'll keep an eye on the forecast for all of y'all sitting at home. It was on a stormy Sunday in Auckland, New Zealand, when Dylan Early met Howard Warner in the 15th round of the 2025 New Zealand Scrabble Masters tournament. I had the absolute pleasure of following this game live with Nigel Richards. In this 23-round event, things were starting to get heated. For years, Howard Warner was at the top of the top in the New Zealand standings, winning the Masters 13 times and National Championships 12. And sitting across from him, Dylan Early, 6-time South African national champion, 7-time South African Masters champion. Having relocated to New Zealand in the 2010s, Dylan also had a Masters and National Championship title to his name. In their biggest production yet, the stream team at New Zealand Scrabble granted us crisp and unfettered access to what ended up being one of the best games I have ever witnessed. Dylan went first, and with DEGLRYZ, he ended up choosing a very nice option of Leggy, setting up nice potential for overlaps, making ZE next turn. And on his end, Howard spends almost no time identifying his best option of Voidness, starting off the game with a bang. Dylan, having his Z spot obscured by the I in Voidness, has the option of playing Frap and Fledgy, setting up the Z on the triple with an O draw. Instead, he decides to part with the Q and exchange down to ARZ. Having drawn 3 A's and no scoring tiles, Howard has the option to play 2 of them in a variety of spots. He decides to keep things a little tight with Aya for 10. With a 4-consonant draw, Dylan perhaps senses a little danger, playing Jarls for 13, setting up JIZ with an I draw, and leaving the E of Voidness open for later. This blocks 3 of the 4 consonants on the board, but the V in Voidness left open gives Howard a massive play of in native for 94, hitting both double word scores. Unfazed by his now 100-plus point deficit, Dylan responds with Sneezier for 84. However, he actually had an even better option. The 7-letter word resees on Dylan's rack doesn't appear to have a home on this board, but in fact it plays above the INNAT of innative. That would have scored 106 points and given Dylan way better chances at coming back in the game. Howard now, with no open T to play Iron Bite, opts to score 29 points and keep very nicely with EYE. This board right now is very constricted, and Howard has good chances of snapping on any opening that Dylan creates. Having drawn the first blank, Dylan unlocks an open row and scores 30 points with Cow. This is exactly what Howard needed as beating for 93 comes crashing down. Now behind 137, the timely bingo of rooting using the blank doesn't even cut Dylan's deficit in half. Dylan needs to draw something out of the bag here, and he gets it. He's threatening a massive bingo through the R he just opened. But with the bingo threats looming on the bottom row, and a huge play available to him, cashing his X on the triple word score is the best way forward, and Howard does it. Dylan strikes with fracture for 101. With a narrowed lead of 35 points, Howard goes on the offensive with Wart. This keeps the lead large enough that another bingo from Dylan would only tie the game up. Amazingly, despite the lack of a spot for a 7-letter word and the low quality of the letters Dylan would need to play through to make an 8-letter word, he strikes for a third time in a row, finding flutinas for 74. For the first time since his opening move of Leggy, Dylan is in the lead. It's short-lived, though, because the K draw for Howard gives him 45 points for Musk on the bottom left. Now having drawn the Q and with only one measly 11-point spot, Dylan is faced with a very tough situation. Score 11, keep ADEEOT, score in the 20s and keep the Q for next turn, or exchange and try to draw something really nice. With the WHO and Wart still open, an unseen blank, and some complications with the Q back in the bag, Dylan opts to exchange, keeping ADET. Howard now, with both remaining eyes, knows it's very unlikely Dylan will be able bingo hooking a blank S onto beating, since that S would need to be in the 6th position of a 7-letter word. With a 42-point buffer, oop for 25, despite the ugly leave, is definitely a good choice here. Dylan has managed to pull the blank on a 3-tile draw, but alongside the V, he needs to do some damage control first and plays Vim for 16. ADET blank is a very strong leave, but on this board, doesn't look like there are many spots left to bingo. On the other hand, now, Howard has drawn the Q himself, and with no good spot to play it now that QI was blocked, he opts to exchange himself. There are exactly 7 tiles in the bag, and this is the last chance Howard is going to get. He knows that one of Dylan's winning conditions is sticking him with the Q and getting 20 points for it in the endgame. Something like triage through the G in beating would set up QI, but Dylan could not only sense the setup and block it, he could also reopen part of the board that's been dormant since the play of beating. There is, however, some huge potential Q play that throwing the eye back in the bag might set up for Dylan if he draws the exact combination that he needs. Now somehow Dylan has pulled a bingo out of the bag, a 9-letter word, and he spots it. But what happens when Dylan draws the Q? Isn't he getting stuck with it? No, with that I, Dylan is threatening to play AD through the D in populated, and that play I was talking about, Fiqs, Fiqhs, playing between those 2 letters on the board, that's 62 points. How is Howard going to fade both of those threats at once? Howard settles on blocking Fiqs with Fribs for 28, setting up an outplay through the OW. The best play was similar, play Flits in the same spot, and after Kadi, Bedel fits for 31 points. However, neither of these options were good enough to win the game, and the only way for Howard to have won is if he hoped that Dylan would miss Fiqs. If Howard played through the D of populated and hit the triple, Dylan's only way to win would be to find Fiqs, which is a much harder find than Adi through the open D. It wouldn't have mattered as Dylan did see Fiqs, but after all is said and done, somehow Dylan Early came back to win this game. Final score Dylan 535, Howard 511. After this game, Dylan went on to win the entirety of the Masters 2025. Not only that, he also won the national championship the next month. The full and unedited version of this game with live commentary and analysis is available on the New Zealand Scrabble YouTube channel, and I'm going to link that in the description. New Zealand is doing amazing things for Scrabble right now with all their top tier broadcasts and all the tournaments that they're hosting throughout the year. They've also started posting YouTube content to their channel, so I very much invite you to check that out. On their roadmap in the future, they're going to be streaming the 2026 Women's Championship, the Masters, and the Nationals in 2026 as well. As for me, and this is a very temporary message, this weekend I'm commentating for Scrabble Australia. They're actually producing their first ever live stream, I think, of their Masters. So there's going to be games from current world champion David Eldar and a bunch of really, really strong players. And I'm also commentating some of those games at the very start of the tournament, so I'll link their channel in the description as well. The reason this is happening is not in small part due to the contributions of New Zealand Scrabble to producing content. So super excited to watch that and be a part of that. Also super excited to do more videos like this in the future. I really enjoy these sorts of mini recaps. And I hope you do too. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you all soon.